Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am Brian Black, joined by Rob Henderson.
Hello.
Today, we are going to be talking about how it's made. So, we decided to kind of offer an in-depth look into some of our product design here at ITS, as well as kind of talk about modern manufacturing and things that go into developing a product, and try to provide a little more insight behind some of the development that a lot of companies take when it comes to producing product, and just how time-consuming and daunting those things can be. So I wanted to start off, I guess, talking about the struggle is real. Seriously.
Anytime there's a comment that's like, you should change this thing.
Yeah.
Just one little thing. Like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, so when you get into designing products and you work with manufacturers, you start to wonder whether people hate money. And just being honest, that's really
it's true.
That's really kind of where at least my mind led when I started to get into this too. I mean, that's kind of how the evolution of ITS has been. So we started out being pure content based, and we developed a membership, and then eventually I've kind of found that I've had a passion for product design, and I saw voids out there in the industry of things that could be added or subtracted from products to kind of create things, for the industry. So that's kind of where we started, and where we've always strived to be is kind of on the cutting edge of product design, and not necessarily just cranking out the same old song and dance. So, and it's tough to do that. It's tough to come up with new ideas all the time, and product design is a long, laborative process that takes a long time from that bar napkin sketch to actual production in hand, ready to sell on the website. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is how that really goes. Some of the
and I love
some of the steps.
If you were to even try to give an estimate on how long it takes from napkin to in the store, you can't, because it depends on the type of product you're doing.
Yeah.
Is it made of nylon? Is it made of this? Is it made of that? It's all going to depend on what steps are involved.
Well, one thing that I've learned through trial and lots of error is that every time you add something or change something, or the more complicated a product is, the more steps are involved in the production. And every time you add a step, or every process is what they're called. Mm-hmm. Every time you add a process, it ups the cost, it ups the labor, it ups the time that it takes to put it together. So all those things are huge factors into product design. So, to like give you an idea, we first started developing that discrete messenger bag years ago, but we made refinements over the years, and that was one of our big goals with this relaunch into the messenger bag that's made out of wax canvas, was not only to offer something in a new material that had a little more inherent water resistance to it, but it was to also simplify the process or the processes behind manufacturing, so that it was actually more affordable at the end to a customer. So, the other thing that goes into product for a manufacturer too is cost, and that's a lot of times what the average consumer doesn't understand when it comes to product. And I'm not going to sit here and tout the fact that we're the most fair priced manufacturer on the planet, because in the end it just depends on how your business functions in terms of how much margin you need to make on a product, and
right.
All of that adds up. Keeping the lights on, employing people, paying salaries, paying taxes, and
right.
everything else that comes with running a business and literally keeping the lights on. That all goes into price. And most people in the product development have a margin or a percentage that they need to hit to make it worthwhile, or it's not worthwhile. So, just as an example, early on in business, I didn't even know what the hell margin was, and I was selling products. So seriously, I mean,
that is a dangerous position to be in.
It's honestly how it was. I had the concept of Keystone in my head, where it's like, oh, well, Keystone's just double whatever it costs you, and then that's it.
Yeah,
and that's what you sell it for.
You're done.
Yeah, I mean, if I can do that, I'd be a gajillionaire.
Enough said, yeah.
So
turns out it's not quite.
Turns out it's not
like
at
that.
all. Yeah, but everything goes into that. On the manufacturing side, raw goods and materials, those costs go up. Labor costs go up. Everything's a factor, and that's what a lot of the internet loves to complain about price.
Sure,
but at the end of the day, we're also making stuff in America, which is tough too.
That's something I was going to mention. It's a totally different. So if one manufacturer made something and we manufacture the same thing in the same processes with the same material by the same people, and we charge a different price, okay, there's the comparison, but it's not comparable to just say, well, this thing is cheaper.
Yep.
Well, okay, I don't know why that's cheaper. Maybe they made it with different materials overseas. Maybe it doesn't have as many processes, like you said. It's just all dependent on that.
Or maybe they're using the product as a marketing tool.
Right.
So therefore their price is super low, so they're just getting sales that aren't really equating to good margin on the company just to actually build.
Known as a loss leader.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of strategies when it comes to pricing and all that kind of stuff too. So there's so many facets to product development that it's not even funny.
Right.
So, those are all things that I've learned over the years. I mean, ITS has been in business 9 years now, and we've been making products, I want to say,
I was going to say
7 years
or 8. Yeah.
So into 8. Yeah, because I mean, one of the first things we ever made was patches. Now, the thing about patches are that there's graphic design that goes into those.
Right.
Matt designs all of our patches, but those are all made overseas. One of the reasons being is because the die cut machines, because we try to raise the bar with what we're doing product wise too. So there are a lot of companies that we can't work with because they're not able to die cut, which means that they can't take shapes.
Like a custom shape.
Right, a custom shape. They're either a square or a circle, so a lot of the stuff you can get made in the U.S. is, embroidered patches is just square and circle and things like that. So to kind of push those limits and to embroider on the kind of machines that can do die cutting, those machines are made in China.
Right.
So if there's a company in the U.S. that's producing die cut embroidered morale patches, which to my knowledge there is not.
The import cost for the machines, from my understanding, is way too high.
Correct.
To get it over here.
Yeah, and that's one of the limitations of why those are still so popular, is that that's where the machines are located.
Yeah.
So you have to produce them overseas. But, we always strive to make as much stuff in America as we can. And we had actually started to make our PVC patches with the U.S. PVC manufacturer, and the quality wasn't that good.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing I kind of wanted to talk about too, is that we're not just solely this, everything has got to be made in America. Like, there is actually good manufacturing overseas.
Yeah, I think it's quality at the top.
It doesn't necessarily mean China either.
Right.
There's plenty of places like the Philippines and the Dominican and France and Germany, and there's a lot of places that make very quality, very good quality stuff.
Very quality.
Very that was not accidental racism, I promise.
I think quality's at the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't matter. I mean, the manufacturing, if we can make it in the U.S., that's great. But if it's not the best quality, it's not the best quality.
Well, and that's the way we've always strived to kind of, or the angle we've always strived to take when it comes to product development and products in general. We've always kind of looked at what exists on the market and can we make it better? If not, we don't make a product.
Yeah.
It's like that Apple video, which I love that video. I actually have it as one of my favorited kind of watch on a weekly basis type of thing. But there's an animated Apple video where it talks about, refinement and quality, and for every 1,000, or for every yes, there's 1,000 no's. And it's true. You know, you can't make everything and be everything to everybody. You have to focus on a core, and it has to make sense to the company to develop a product like that.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion, you should want to provide something to the market that adds something to the conversation, not me too. So that's just my design philosophy. I never want to release something that's not purpose built.
Yeah.
You know, to solve a problem or answer a question or, you know, raise the bar, so to speak.
Yeah,
so.
and like you said, it shouldn't just be another, we're doing this as well.
Yep.
But no changes. Everything's the same. It just doesn't add anything.
Yeah, I mean, so like for instance, our trauma kit pouches, like these ETA trauma kit pouches that we made, the original design was kind of a collab between Zula Nylon Gear and ourselves, and Joel and I kicked around this design for a long time, and both the Tall Boy and the Fat Boy versions. But, you know, now it's become so recognizable in the industry that you see it everywhere. This whole tear down panel design for a trauma kit, we made it up,
right?
You know, and at the end of the day, everything you see that's like this came from us, you know?
And some people are Me Too.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly. Well, and, you know, a lot of people change up designs too, and that's one of the things that, you know, I've learned about the industry too, is you're never going to prevent people from taking something and making it better. The only way to do that is to patent it, and nylon is very hard to patent. It's easier to patent a process, so we probably could have technically got a patent on the process to, you know, have this type of opening for a trauma kit, like a quick release or quick access. But it was designed around not only being able to quickly access the components that are inside, but we wanted something that was that could hold our vacuum sealed trauma kit, or if you broke out all the components from a vacuum sealed trauma kit, you could individually place them in the kit and have them readily available if you needed them. But that was the design, was this quick pull handle and that type of thing. So, you know, and honestly, one of the things that stifles creativity and innovation too is actually the government, which, you know, that seems like something contradictory. You're like, well, why would the government want to screw with small business? Well, they actually do, because the contracts that they open up can sometimes screw small manufacturing, because what they'll do is they'll put out a solicitation and say, hey, we need this type of design. Well, if there's only one place that made the design, and now you're opening this up to multiple manufacturers to bid on this job, guess what? Now they have to knock off your design to make their own, and they can change it up a little bit, but some don't even do that. So, you know, it's kind of tough from that standpoint of being in business. Those are all little small lessons that
it's tiny little tidbits people don't consider.
Come across,
I think a lot of times when it comes to that.
Yeah, and a lot of times you have to have the infrastructure and manufacturing to support those government contracts. So sometimes only the big boys can play with those things. I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces. So, you know, it's one of those things where you have to either be on the lookout for those government contracts and ready to pounce on them and manufacture those things.
But then also do it the cheapest.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Because you're bidding. So that's,
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's a delicate balance, and every company's different. So. Sure. But yeah, we've always tried to kind of push the envelope a little bit with that, and you know, even down to design details and materials. Like, everything is a choice. Everything's not only a choice, but it's an analysis. You want to say, is this the best material to use? And that's how we approach design too. Is that, you know, I don't use printed multicam webbing because over time it fades. So when the sun hits it, that printed material will fade and turn to like a grayish or a tan
sometimes
material.
Even like a white.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets real faded.
And what's the point of camouflage if it's not camouflage? Right. So that's why we like use Murdoch multicam webbing, because it's actually woven with the pattern on a loom rather than printed.
And it's not prone to as much fading.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's fabric, so.
Yeah, all fabric fades, but at the same time,
But in relation to the other materials like the Cordura and things, it won't fade.
Yep.
Faster.
Yep.
And it's, like you said, I think it's an analysis of what do we want to see in a blank. So if it's, in a trauma kit pouch, what do we want to see? Well, we'd like to be able to carry a vacuum sealed kit, but then also it broken down, not one or the other, so you can pick. So I think a lot of the stuff you'll see from us is you can kind of like the YouTube video, you smash it out the way you want to smash it out.
Exactly.
We offer a lot of like with a messenger bag, you can organize it however you want because we didn't want to get too granular with it, but at the same time we did want to offer people the ability to change stuff out because you change up what you carry.
Well, and that's one of the kind of driving principles behind our design is I want it to be modular. I always try to integrate modularity into everything we do, whether it be a trauma kit pouch or a messenger bag or something to that effect. And I love products, too, that can do multiple things at once. So kind of that 80s Transformer aspect, you know.
More than meets the eye?
Exactly. I do want it to be a product that you can do more than one thing with. And,
sure.
You know, I like the Tourniquet pouch. Like, just to kind of talk about the design of this, it was 2.5 years that it took from bar napkin sketch. And I remember when I drew this. It was in an airport. I had just gotten off the plane. I fell asleep, and I was thinking about this design.
Dreams of tourniquets in your head.
Well, you know, it's so something that has always existed is the problem of where do you carry a tourniquet? Mm-hmm. Well, I carry it rubber banded to my kit. Okay, well, so the elements degrade tourniquets, and that's been proven that over time, either the rubber bands fail or the tourniquet loses its efficacy because of, you know, dirt and salt water or water and the elements and heat and all that kind of stuff. So you need it protected. So I thought, okay, well, what exists on the market that actually protects a tourniquet? Okay, well, there's some pouches out there. There's actually some pouches you can kind of quickly get into as well. But, you know, what's the overlying driving principle behind tourniquets? Well, it's to keep the blood in the body, right? So I know that the timing from when you remove a tourniquet to actual application matters. You know?
Yeah, nobody's ever needed a tourniquet slowly.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you always want to stop the flow of blood immediately. So the less time it takes you from deployment to application, and that was one of the driving factors behind that development, was I wanted to make something that lowered that time. So at first, I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to make a pouch that allows people to get into it quickly. And then I started to think, well, what am I really adding to the conversation? What am I really doing differently? Well, not much.
Right.
You know, yes, we've got this kind of tear down concept, and we could look at having that type of thing on a tourniquet pouch, but then what are you really adding? Well, you could, you know, save a second off of, you know, what it takes you to actually get a tourniquet out. Okay, well, what happens with tourniquets, if you look into that and you look into kind of the philosophy behind how people carry those, it's, well, a lot of people leave them in the package. Well, why do they leave them in the package? Well, because they're kind of secure in the package, and people think, well, if I don't open it, then it stays better.
It's protected.
It's protected, right. So that goes back to the whole protection angle of the development. We wanted something that was completely encapsulated, like a tourniquet would fit inside of it. It would get sealed, and it would be protected from the elements. Not necessarily waterproofed, but at the same time protected from the elements. And then we started looking at, so now it's protected, and yeah, you can access it quickly, but how about holding it? Like, are you gonna mount it to a belt? Or are you gonna put it on a backpack? And I started looking at everywhere that people wore tourniquets.
Yeah. Well, where do you want to put this?
Yeah, where are they? So
everywhere.
Officers are starting to carry tourniquets now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started at ITS, nobody even really knew what a trauma kit was when it came to law enforcement. And if they did, it was because they bought one themselves. It wasn't because the department issued them one. It's because they gave enough of a to carry a trauma kit on their own, because they knew that they were solely dependent on EMS to save their lives if something happened, and that's just a bad predicament to be in. And luckily, law enforcement has caught on, you know, the head shed, so to speak, or the people that make the decisions have finally caught on.
Lots of changes, which is great.
And are now, you know, issuing trauma kits and giving trauma kit classes and, you know, teaching people how to put on tourniquets and things like that. So it's huge. And now you see officers wearing tourniquets on their belts, and which I love.
That's great.
There's nothing more that I love than to see an officer have a tourniquet on their belt. So
prepared.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that we could be compatible with something like that. I wanted it to be something that they were able to access in a hurry, you know, to still apply a tourniquet if they needed to. You know, the design still had to be something that they could access one-handed. You know, it wasn't a two-handed type access. And most pouches are a one hand type access. But that's kind of where we started to go down that path with, which was mounting. And I thought, well, we could make something that could mount everywhere. Well, what would that look like? Well, we already kind of had the design from our slimline pouch with kind of a mounting system. And we were able to increase that 3-way mounting system and actually turn it into a 4-way mounting system and work that into the patent that we have on the Tourniquet pouch, which I learned my lesson with the ETA kit pouches, and like, hey, I've actually got a system where I'm going to patent it. So it is patent pending, which is nice too, but that's been part of the laborious 2.5-year process is working out all the patents.
So I mean, technically, even though it's for sale, it's not done. Oh, you know, like the process is still ongoing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But when it came to mounting, it was vertical and horizontal on a belt, and now it has one wrap strap, so you can put it on a backpack strap, and still got the ability with PALs to mount it on MOLLE. So there's 4 different ways to mount it. And I thought, okay, well, now that's something. Mm-hmm. Now I'm coming up with at least a different way to mount a tourniquet pouch. So now I'm adding to the equation. I'm coming out with a product that means something. And then we started looking at, okay, so if we fold this a certain way and we actually integrate the tail into the lid of this pouch, which is completely removable, I found that if I folded it a certain way, I could repeat being able to deploy the tourniquet at the same time you open the pouch. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So, of course, I was super excited about it and wanted nothing more than to come out with the product immediately. But the design revisions were so many that, I mean, I probably went through 50 different iterations, at least, of this pouch to get it to where it is now. The sides weren't stiffened, the plastic inserts were clocked the wrong direction. It's just so
it always
many
gets to a point where you're like, well, what if it did this?
Yeah.
What if we changed this tiny little thing?
Yeah.
And then you have to get that done and see it, and then, oh no, that didn't work, or yeah, that did work, or move forward.
Well, it's crazy how much goes into that, and where it ends up at the end. And I mean, just even small things like, oh, I'm going to put a bar tack here because that's a stress point, and if that gets pulled a lot, then it could fail there, so I'm going to make sure it doesn't fail. And just thinking outside the box and kind of thinking ahead and going, well, if this is going to fail, where is it going to fail? And of course, every time you add something like a bar tack, it adds a process. Yep. And people don't see that when they look at a product. They kind of see, oh, it holds a tourniquet, and I don't know if it's worth that to me, so I'm going to keep using rubber bands.
Well, and that's something that we try to provide the information for, when someone looks at the cost of something, but we hope that it gets measured up to the other things that we've done. So if you own an ETA kit pouch, that it's solid, that it's stayed together, that it does what you need it to do. And so hopefully you can kind of port that over to other things, because we do that with everything. It's not just, oh, this is the ETA kit pouch, so it gets a little bit higher of a quality control check. No, we want that to be across the board. We want everything to have bar tacks and best materials and things like that. Yeah,
and I mean, before we sign our name on it, like that's huge for us. Like it goes through a very, very rigorous QC process, and we've lost manufacturing before because of our stringent QC.
Just couldn't cut it.
Yeah,
and sew it.
Yeah, there you go. But it's one of those things where I'm not only gonna hold ourselves to a higher standard, but I'm gonna hold our manufacturing to a higher standard, and I'm gonna hold our billing department to a higher standard. It's just it's a company-wide perspective on what you want your customer to say about you at the end of the day. And I've always tried to put myself in the customer's shoes and go and say, okay, so as an end user, what would I want to see?
Right.
How would I want this handled if something happened to this pouch, or how would I want it to hold up, or what would my expectations be like? So there's just so many things that go into that it's tough to sit here and talk about all those small things.
My favorite tidbit along those lines is that the pouches come with malice clips.
Yeah.
That's such a tiny little thing that people won't think about, is how are you going to mount it? And I'm the one that if I get something in the mail, I'm super excited to get it. And if I were to get it and find out that I didn't have the tools to put it on, I'd be super disappointed.
I agree.
So just little tiny things like that.
Well, and again, that's just putting ourselves in the customer's shoes.
Yeah, and that's exactly knowing, that. What would we want? pulling this out of the box. Well, I'd want it to be ready to go. It's like including batteries if you have a battery operated product.
Right.
It's just a nice thing to do.
And not those cheap ones.
Don't skimp.
I've always hated that when you
Yeah.
you buy something that comes with batteries and you get those cheap China batteries that don't last worth a crap in your device, and you're like, I'm not even going to put these in.
Yeah.
Like it would be. I mean, if I didn't have any batteries, then I would put those in. But yeah,
That's why I like Apple stuff, because they have a mandate that it has battery charge when you get it, like a partial charge. Because there's nothing worse than getting a new thing out and not being able to play
exactly.
with it. So like,
Yeah,
they
it's
know.
true.
And the other companies that we've seen that are in that same realm, like they know what they want, and that's important to put yourself in the customer's shoes.
Well, I've become such an asshole lately in the last few years, and that's the truth. Is because
Just in general.
I critique the hell out of everything now. It's like I can't stop because of what I've done with product design. I look at something, I'm like, how the hell did they let that through?
You're like
You know?
holding something by the handle, like, who made this handle?
Oh, it's just terrible, man. And ignorance is bliss when it comes to that. Because
yeah.
I'd honestly rather not have any of that experience and just try to enjoy products
Right.
the right way. But no, I have to critique the shit out of everything, and
Don't you hate that this pen does this?
Oh yeah,
Ah,
oh, it's terrible.
I didn't
man.
see that before.
But I mean, I guess the world needs people like that.
Yeah.
That look at things with a discerning eye and make them better. But that's my curse.
Yeah,
You know,
the nitpicking.
Yeah, for good product development, the flip side of that is that I always critique everything, and I'm never happy with products. So, yeah, it's this insatiable
Cursed life.
insatiable lust for creating good. So
Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
I like
don't know
that.
what it is. But anyway, I wanted to talk about more of the material side of things, but I think we hit a little bit of that in the conversation. And, I know there's a scout dad whose kids listen to this, and I apologize for my cursing.
I'm going to try to catch him if I
yeah.
can in the edit.
We'll see if we can bleep them. But anyway, this is what I'm passionate about, and I love looking at things like that, and I love making them better, and hopefully people can see that in the quality of what they buy from us and at ITS. But overall, this was also not just about us. I wanted to kind of give you guys listening at home kind of an insight into product design in general and kind of what goes into it. And there's so much more that goes into it. I mean, I could fill hours of conversation with what actually happens in the design process, but it's kind of like being in the military. Hurry up and wait. That's really what it's like. You get a prototype. Oh man, I better get this feedback to him. And then it's like, oh, I'm gonna wait for a while. Oh, I got a new prototype.
Anything? Nope.
No.
Anything? Nope. Sitting out by the mailbox.
It's like waiting for my decoder ring in the mail. All right, thanks for listening to Gear Tasting Radio. Remember, if you have questions, use the pound tag Gear Tasting. Let's make it I like your mandate word that you said. It sounds kind of hipster. You used that in the podcast. But
I did.
We'll make a mandate that next episode we're going to answer questions.
All right.
All right. So mark that down.
Yeah.
Pretend to write that down.
Yeah. Write that down somewhere. Love that.
While you're on Apple Podcasts, be sure to check us out. Hopefully you're there listening to our podcast and you've downloaded it from Apple Podcasts. But if not,
None of these bootleg podcast suppliers.
check it out. Leave us a review while you're there. The reviews have been cracking us up, so please continue to leave those. We love them. Also, your subscription and rating really helps too, because Apple will take that good rating, hopefully it's 5 stars,
Wink, wink.
and show people that haven't seen our podcast. It'll kind of get fresh eyes on it in terms of that. So they have an algorithm where more top-rated podcasts will be shown to more people, so hence they will get better. We would like ours to be in that camp as well, so I very much appreciate it. Last but not least, check out our Crew Leader membership. We have got details in the episode intel on the site when we publish the podcast, as well as on YouTube in the description if you're watching the video of this, or Apple Podcasts.
There's a
has
link
that
somewhere.
as well.
Click it.
Yeah, lots of links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.